Welcome to a journey through the silent corridors and shadowed wards of Canada's most haunted medical institutions. Hospitals are places of transition, where life begins and where it often ends. But in these 10 locations, the transition was never quite completed. From the sterile halls of Vancouver to the decaying brickwork of Ontario, thousands of souls remain trapped between the world of the living and the echoes of the past. Dim the lights and steady your breath. These are the top 10 most haunted hospitals in Canada. 10. St. Paul's Hospital, Vancouver, British Columbia. Founded in 1894 by the Sisters of Providence, St. Paul's began as a modest 25-bed wooden building designed to serve a rapidly growing Vancouver. For over a century, it evolved into a world-class teaching hospital, surviving world wars and the 1918 flu pandemic, always anchored by its Catholic roots and the presence of the nursing sisters. As a major operating facility, St. Paul's hasn't been abandoned, but the sheer volume of death and emotional intensity over 130 years has left a psychic imprint. It became haunted through the collective energy of thousands of patients and the devoted nuns who never truly left their posts. The most famous resident is the Phantom Nun. Multiple staff members and patients have reported seeing a sister in a traditional habit, standing silently in the elevators or gliding through the older corridors. One chilling account describes a patient who pressed the elevator button for the lobby, only for it to stop at a floor currently under renovation. The doors opened to a dark, gutted hallway, where a nun stood perfectly still, staring back. When the doors closed and reopened at the lobby, she had vanished. Security guards frequently report disembodied footsteps and the sound of soft chanting coming from the old chapel late at night, when the building is supposedly empty. 9. St. Joseph's Health Centre, former wards, Toronto, Ontario. Originally an orphanage and then a hospital founded by the Sisters of St. Joseph in 1921, this facility was a cornerstone of Toronto's West End. It was a place of frantic activity, particularly the maternity and pediatric wards, which were known for their high-paced, high-stakes environment. The hauntings are concentrated in the older wings of the building. The transition occurred as the hospital modernized. As old wards were closed or repurposed, the residue of the past began to manifest. The emotional highs and lows of birth and death created a spiritual loop. In the old nursery areas, even those now used for storage, nurses have reported the distinct sound of phantom baby cries that stop the moment a light is turned on. More unsettling is the Sister of Mercy, a spectral figure often seen in the peripheral vision of patients in the older palliative care wings. One vivid encounter involved a night shift nurse who felt a hand on her shoulder while charting. She turned to see an elderly woman in a nurse's cap from the 1940s, who whispered, "They're sleeping now," before fading into the wall. Phantom baby cries audible. 8. Charles Camsell Hospital, Edmonton, Alberta. This site has a dark, complex history. Once a Jesuit college, it was converted in 1946 into an Indian hospital, specifically to treat Indigenous people with tuberculosis. It was a place of forced segregation, where patients were often kept for years, far from their families and culture. The hospital became haunted due to the profound suffering, loneliness, and systemic mistreatment of its patients. Many died without their traditional rites, and their spirits are said to be restless, seeking the home they were never allowed to return to. Before its demolition and redevelopment, the Camsell was a magnet for the paranormal. Urban explorers reported hearing blood-curdling screams echoing through the elevator shafts and the sound of children laughing in the basement morgue. A common encounter was the man in the gray suit, a tall, shadow-like figure that would charge at intruders, disappearing just before impact. Witnesses also described a heavy, crushing atmosphere that made it feel as though the very air was mourning. 7. Lakeshore Psychiatric Hospital, Mimico Asylum, Etobicoke, Ontario, opened in 1890. This was originally intended as a humane respite for the mentally ill, featuring beautiful architecture and lakeside views. However, by the mid-20th century, it became overcrowded and notorious for its controversial treatments, including over 1,400 lobotomy procedures. The grounds are a site of immense tragedy. There is a nearby cemetery containing 1,511 patients buried in unmarked graves, identified only by numbers. The lack of dignity in life and death at Mimico is believed to have anchored the spirits to the site. The tunnels connecting the buildings, now part of Humber College, are the epicenter of activity. The Grey Lady is frequently seen wandering these tunnels, her feet never touching the ground. Students and faculty have reported the sound of heavy objects being dragged across the floors above them when no one is there. In the old powerhouse building, people have experienced sudden, localized drops in temperature and the feeling of invisible hands pushing them toward the exit. 6. Hamilton Asylum for the Insane, Century Manor, Hamilton, Ontario. Built in 1884, Century Manor is the only remaining building of a massive asylum complex that once overlooked the city of Hamilton. It was a self-sufficient city of the mad, housing those deemed incurable. Patients were subjected to Utica cribs, wooden cages used for restraint, and early experimental psychiatric drugs. The manor became a lighthouse for the spirits of the entire demolished complex. As the other buildings fell, the energy retreated into Century Manor. The decades of confinement and the therapeutic violence of the 19th century created a permanent stain on the property. Passers-by frequently report seeing pale faces peering out of the boarded-up windows of the upper floors. Inside, the air is said to be thick with the smell of ozone and old medicine. Paranormal investigators have captured EVPs, electronic voice phenomena, of a man whispering, "Don't let them in." The most terrifying reports involve a dark mass that lurks in the basement, described as an entity of pure, concentrated despair that causes visitors to flee in a state of panic. Don't let them in. 5. North Battleford Sanatorium, Saskatchewan Hospital, Saskatchewan. Standing like a Gothic fortress on the prairies, the Saskatchewan Hospital North Battleford opened in 1913. It was a massive, self-contained community intended to treat the mentally ill and those suffering from tuberculosis. At its peak, it housed over 2,000 patients. It was a place of isolation, where the vast, flat horizon of the Saskatchewan plains was the only view for those deemed unfit for society. The haunting is born from the forgotten nature of the site. Behind the hospital lies a cemetery with over 700 unmarked graves, where patients were buried with only a number to identify them. The transition to a haunted site occurred as the hospital's population dwindled and the massive wings fell into decay. The spirits here are said to be seeking the identities they lost while institutionalized. Local residents and former staff talk about the White Lady of the Sand. She's often seen wandering the tree line near the cemetery, looking toward the hospital windows as if searching for someone. Inside the derelict wards, visitors have reported the sound of a phantom piano playing a melancholy tune that echoes through the vents. The most chilling encounter is the pit, a basement area where people report an overwhelming sensation of being pushed by invisible hands, followed by the sound of a heavy door slamming shut, even when no doors are nearby. 4. Weyburn Mental Hospital, Souris Valley, Saskatchewan. When it opened in 1921, it was the largest building in the British Commonwealth. Weyburn was the cutting edge of psychiatric care, but cutting edge in the 1950s meant it became the world's epicenter for LSD experimentation. Doctors used the drug on both patients and staff to unlock the mind, leading to a history of blurred lines between reality and hallucination. The hospital was demolished in 2009, but the haunting didn't stop. It simply moved into the soil. The intense psychic energy generated by decades of experimental drug use and radical lobotomies created a thin spot in reality. It became haunted by the fragmented minds of those who never truly recovered from their treatments. Before its demolition, explorers described the dark side, a wing where flashlights would inexplicably fail. Witnesses reported seeing shadow people that didn't just move in the periphery but stood directly in front of you, tall and featureless. Even now, with the building gone, people walking the grounds report hearing the Weyburn scream, a piercing multitonal shriek that seems to come from deep underground. Weyburn Scream, SFX. 3. St. Thomas Psychiatric Hospital, Ontario. This sprawling 460-acre complex opened in 1939. Its architecture was beautiful but deceptive. Inside, it housed some of the most difficult psychiatric cases in the province. During World War II, it was briefly used as a training base for the Royal Canadian Air Force before returning to its grim purpose as a forensic psychiatric facility. The hospital became haunted through a legacy of extreme patient isolation. The history after became one of litigation and horror stories of patient abuse, which seemed to fuel the paranormal activity. When the main buildings were closed, the silence was quickly replaced by something else. Security guards have documented the nurse in white. Unlike the helpful spirits in other hospitals, this entity is described as authoritative and angry. She is seen patrolling the forensic wings, and those who see her report a sudden metallic taste in their mouths and a feeling of intense dread. In the old kitchen area, the sounds of clattering pans and shouting voices are heard daily, yet the room has been stripped of all equipment for years. One visitor reported seeing a man in a patient gown running toward a wall, only to vanish into the brickwork just before impact. 2. Riverview Hospital, Coquitlam, British Columbia. Opened in 1913 as Essendale, Riverview was once the primary mental health facility for all of BC. It is a place of massive, imposing brick structures and lush, manicured grounds. Over the decades, it became a mini-city, but as psychiatric care moved toward community-based models, the wards began to empty, leaving behind 100 years of emotional residue. Riverview is unique because it has been kept in a state of living decay for use as a film set, appearing in The X-Files and Supernatural. It became haunted by the weight of its own history. The thousands of patients who lived and died within its walls left a permanent mark. The atmosphere is so heavy that many film crews refuse to work in the Crease Clinic after dark. The most famous spirit is the Grey Man, who haunts the upper floors of the West Lawn building. He is often seen standing by the windows, looking out at the gardens. In the basement morgue, people have reported their names being whispered by a raspy, disembodied voice. Perhaps the most terrifying encounter is the ghost alarm. Fire alarms throughout the vacant buildings will trigger simultaneously in the middle of the night, despite no smoke, no fire, and no power running to the pull stations. 1. Tranquille Sanatorium, Tranquille Farm, Kamloops, British Columbia. Originally a ranch, it was converted into a tuberculosis sanatorium in 1907 due to the dry, healing air of Kamloops. It was a place of forced rest and often slow death. Later, it became a facility for the mentally disabled. It is a massive site with a complex system of underground tunnels used to transport laundry, food, and, frequently, bodies. Tranquille is widely considered the most haunted place in Canada. It became haunted through the sheer volume of white plague, TB deaths, and the deep isolation of the site. The tunnels act as a conduit for spiritual energy, trapping the echoes of the past beneath the earth. The tunnel voices are the most common experience. Visitors hear a cacophony of whispers, coughs, and crying that follows them through the dark passages. In the main hospital building, phantom smells of cigar smoke and industrial disinfectant manifest out of nowhere. Orbs of light are frequently caught on camera, but the most chilling, real encounter was reported by a caretaker who saw a group of children in old-fashioned clothing playing in the fire building. When he called out to them, they all turned, placed their fingers to their lips in a shushing gesture, and faded into the floorboards. You have walked the halls of the forgotten and listened to the echoes of Canada's most troubled sanctuaries. These 10 hospitals stand as monuments to our past, places where the line between medicine and misery was often blurred. While the doctors and nurses have long since moved on, some patients, it seems, are still waiting for their final discharge. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the dark. If you ever find yourself near these hallowed grounds, remember, some shadows don't need a light to be seen.